All right, hello and welcome to the lesson Multiplying and Dividing Decimals. Please make sure that you have the notes page for today. It should say Multiplying and Dividing Decimals at the top, and please make sure you fill it in as we go. Today our objective is that you learners will be able to apply the rules of multiplication and division to numbers with decimals, so multiplying and dividing decimals. So let's get started with multiplying. And again, be sure you are filling in your notes. Step number 1 is you are going to write your multiplication problem and multiply like normal. Notice it does not say anything about lining up the decimals. You just write the problem and multiply. Step number 2, count the number of digits behind a decimal point in the problem, and in fact we need to count the number of digits behind any decimal point. So in the example at the bottom, we have 2.7 times 3.5. I notice that there is a number 7 behind a decimal point and a number 5 behind a decimal point. So there are 2 digits behind decimals in the problem. And I'm going to keep that in mind for step number 3. Put the decimal point in my answer. My answer should have the same number of decimal points that we had in our problem. So from the previous example, we had 2 digits behind the decimal point, so our answer should have 2 digits behind the decimal point. Step 4, sometimes we need to add 0 so that our decimal can be in the proper place and we can fill in those empty spaces with 0, so add zeros if needed is step number 4. So let's take a look at what this actually looks like when we are solving a problem here. As you can see, this is the same example from before. So I see 2.7 times 3.5. In this problem, the decimals do happen to line up, but again, remember that is not a rule. So I'm going to go ahead and do 5 times 7 is 35. Carry the 3. 5 times 2 is 10 plus 3 is 13. Now I'm going to have a placeholder 0. 3 times 7 is 21. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8. I'm going to add these. 5 plus 0 is 5. 3 plus 1 is 4. 8 plus 1 is 9. And again, I had 2 digits behind the decimals in my problem. So in my answer, I also need to have 2 digits behind my decimal. So my decimal is going to go right here to allow for those 2 digits behind the decimal point. So my answer, 9.45 or 9 45 hundredths. Let's take a look at another one here. Again, make sure you are filling these in on your notes. 7.56 times 3.8. So first I'm going to write the multiplication problem up and down like I normally would a multiplication problem. Notice I'm not worrying about lining up those decimals. Then multiply like normal. First I'm going to start with 8 times 6, and that is 48. Carry the 4. 8 times 5 is 40, plus 4 is 44. And 8 times 7. 8 times 7 is 56, plus 4 gives me 60. Placeholder 0 to move on to the 3. 3 times 6 is 18. Carry the 1. 5 times 3 is 15. Adding the carried 1 is 16. And then 7 times 3 is 21, plus 1 is 22. And now I'm going to add these 2 numbers to finish up my multiplication problem. 8 plus 0 is 8. 8 plus 4 is 12. Carry the 1. 6 plus 0 is 6, plus 1 is 7. 6 plus 2 is 8. 2 plus nothing is 2. Now I'm going to look back at my problem and count the number of digits behind decimals. I have 1, 2, 3. So that means when I place my decimal in the answer, I should have 1, 2, 3. Decimal goes right here. 28.728. On this last one, I encourage you to try it yourself, so please pause the video, write it down, and give it a try. When you are ready to check your answer, go ahead and resume your video. All right, welcome back. It's time to check our answer here. I am going to go a little quicker since hopefully you already have the problem done. 3425 times 3.9. 9 times 5 is 45. 9 times 2 is 18, plus 4 is 22. Sorry, it's not letting me write my carried 2. I'm going to write it right there. I'm having issues. I'm not sure why. I'm sorry. 9 times 4 is 36, plus that carried 2 in a weird place is 38. And 9 times 3 is 27. And I'm going to add 3 to that to give me 30. Placeholder 0, getting rid of my extras. 3 times 5 is 15. Carry the 1. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. 3 times 4 is 12. Carry the 1 there. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10. Adding these together. And in this problem, I have quite a few more decimal digits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my answer is 1.33575. All right, so now that we have...
Dividing.
I apologize, I'm not sure what that was. Now that we have done multiplying, we are going to go ahead and do dividing decimals, and you'll notice I have it also saying swinging monkeys. I have some monkey analogies here to try to help us out. Let's move on to our dividing decimals. So, our swinging monkeys, we want to think about this phrase over here on the left, monkey see, monkey do. Whatever the outside monkey does, the inside monkey does also. In these specific examples, the monkey I'm referring to is going to be our decimal. Okay? So, first, a couple of vocabulary words. The number on the outside is called a divisor. I've heard this referred to as the divisor knocking on the door of the division house, so that might be an easy way to remember. And then we have the dividend, which is the number on the inside. And the quotient is the answer on the roof. So I have 12.64 being divided by 0.2. It's also important to note on this slide, notice that the first number in our division problem is the number that goes inside our division house. Here are the steps, and it is quite lengthy, but please make sure you are filling in the blanks as we continue here. Making the divisor on the outside a whole number is the first thing that we need to do, and we do that by moving our decimal point to the right as many times as it takes to make it a whole number. So basically our decimal is going to move all the way to the division house. Once we do that, notice in step number 2, we need to move the decimal to the right in the dividend as many times as we did in the divisor. In monkey terms, whatever the outside monkey does, the inside monkey does. Once we move those decimal points, we are going to bring it up, lined up from the inside onto our answer, to our quotient. The monkey climbs up and sits on the roof is our monkey terms for that. So let's take a look at what that actually looks like. Okay, right now I have 0.2 on the outside. I need to make that into a whole number. So I'm going to do that by, in the divisor, moving that decimal point 1 to the right. Instead of 0.2, now I have 2 point, or just the whole number 2. Because I did that on the outside, I also need to do the same thing on the inside. I need to take the 12.64 and take that decimal and move it 1 place to the right in my dividend, making it 126.4. So again, just demonstrating those moving decimals here. And then I need to bring my decimal straight up to the top, and then I can solve it like a regular division problem. So let's go ahead and do that. 2 into 1, it does not work. 2 into 12 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12, so I'm going to subtract and get 0. Bring down the 6. 2 into 6 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. Subtract, get 0. Bring down the 4. 2 into 4 is 2. And that is the end of my division problem. My answer, 63.2. Now, something that I notice when students are doing division, be sure to keep your problem organized and your numbers lined up. I see students putting the decimal in the wrong place simply because they are not staying organized in their work. Let's take a look at the next problem. Remember, the first number is the number that's going to go in our division house, so I'm going to have 14.2 being divided by 0.2 again. The first thing I need to do is move the decimal on the outside to make it a whole number. I moved 1 to the right, so on the inside I also move 1 to the right. And once I do that, I bring it up to the top. And now I can divide like normal. Get rid of some of my extra stuff here. So, 2 into 1, it does not work. 2 into 14 is 7. 7 times 2 is 14. Bring down the 2. 2 into 2 is 1. And so my answer for this problem is 71. Notice I did not end up with anything behind my decimal, and that's okay. All right, the next one, 25.5 divided by 1.5. Okay, so again, moving my decimal 1 hop to the right in both of my numbers because that's all I needed to make my outside number a whole number. And then I bring it up to the roof of my division house, and then I can go ahead and divide like normal. 15 into 2 does not work. 15 into 25 will go in one time. So I subtract 15 here, and I have 10 left over. 15 into 105. I'm not sure how many times that is. I don't have my 15s memorized quite that quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and do some things off to the side here to figure out about how many times. I'm going to go ahead and try 15 times 6 and see what that gets me. 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 3 is 9. That's not quite enough, so I'm going to try 15 times 7. 7 times 5 is 35. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 3 is 10. Oh, 7 is perfect. So my answer for this one is 17. Take a look at this one here as well. 13.4 divided by 3.8. Go ahead and pause your video. Do the best you can on this problem and come back and press play when you're ready to check your answer. All right, let's check our answer here. Moving the decimal 1 to the right, 1 to the right. Once I move my decimals to the right, I also go up to the top here. So now I have 38 into 134. I do not have my 38, counting by 38s memorized here. So I'm going to pretend kind of like this outside the divisor is 40 and think about counting by 40s. And when I do that, I think of 40, then 80, like counting by 4s here. 40, 80, then 120 would be 3. So I'm going to try 38 times 3 and see how close that gets me. 8 times 3 is 24. 3 times 3 is 9, plus 2 is 11. That might be all right, but I'm going to go ahead and also try times 4 just to be sure. 8 times 4 is 32. 3 times 4 is 12, plus 3 is 15, and that is too much. So I'm going to do 3 times, and that is 114. Notice in this problem I do have to add a 0 and bring it down. Now 200 divided by 38. I am going to try 38 times 5 and see where that gets me. 38 times 5, 5 times 8 is 40, 5 times 3 is 15, and that's 19. I think that's going to be my best bet here. Subtract, and I get 10. 38 into 100, I think is only going to go 2 times this time. 16, 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. This is going to become a 0, 10, 9, and then I add another 0, 240 divided by 38. And I'm going to go ahead and encourage you to stop at this point, even though we are not completely done with our problem. As I look more and more at this problem, I see that it's going to be a really long decimal. So I'm going to allow you to stop at the hundredths place, and knowing that our decimal does in fact continue. Alright, so today you learned how to multiply and divide decimals. After you have finished your notes, please take your notes page to the teacher and show them you have completed it to get your practice.